Hi and welcome back. Holly Shields here for Kalkine TV and you're watching Travel Insights. To shed some light for us on the air travel and aviation space, we're thrilled to welcome Mr. Graham Turner, CEO of Flight Centre. Welcome to the show, Graham. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Holly.
Great to have you on. Now, first of all, it's no secret that the aviation sector is undergoing some massive changes at the moment. What can you tell us about the state of the industry at present?
Well, as you can imagine, particularly in Australia and New Zealand, where we're a long way behind the rest of the world, airlines are struggling. They're having to come in to Australia with as little as 8 to 15 passengers out of 380 seats. So it's pretty tough. They've obviously got freight, they're bringing in a lot, but and most of the airlines have cut back to maybe a third of their normal schedule. But we've still got a lot of airlines flying in here. You'll know Qantas isn't, but airlines like Qatar, Emirates, United Airlines, Singapore Airlines, there's still quite a few coming in from overseas. So it's not as if we have to start from scratch or anything, but it is a pretty tough game for them. Obviously, it's costing them a lot of money. Every flight they come in, they lose a bucket load on.
I don't doubt that. Absolutely. And are we looking at a revival, though? Albeit a slow revival, but still a revival?
Yeah, look, I think there's not much doubt that we'll be flying internationally again well before Christmas. I think probably late October out of New South Wales, maybe Victoria. Queensland, WA will be a long way behind them, but I think, it's almost certain you'll be able to fly from Sydney to London or Sydney to LA, New York, well before you can fly Sydney to Brisbane. That's what it's looking like at the moment. It's sad, but that's the way it is looking. But, that's better than not being able to fly at all.
Well, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It is better than not being able to fly at all. And I'm sure Australians are really eager to get overseas. Now, in terms of economic impacts, what are we expecting to see from this revival?
Look, I think once the governments open the borders up, it'll come back pretty quickly, particularly VFR, visiting friends and relations. That's what people really want to get onto. A lot of people haven't seen their parents, their children, their grandparents for perhaps 18 months or 2 years. Pardon me. So, this is going to be really important. Then the leisure travel and the corporate travel will come after that, we believe. So it'll come back pretty quickly.
Right, very interesting to see that unfold. And we know that obviously employment has been hit really hard as the sector has been hit hard. Are we going to see that recover at all?
Yeah, look, I think some of the international tourist facilities, particularly in North Queensland, are going to really suffer. Because a lot of these facilities aren't of a lot of interest to Australians. They're mainly internationals from Europe, the UK and North America. So some of these businesses are going to take years to come back. But I think a lot of the other destinations will come back fairly quickly, we believe anyway.
Right, well, fingers crossed there. We hope to see that happen. Now, talking about quickly and timeline-wise, Boeing is anticipating pre-pandemic levels of passenger numbers to return to normal by 2024. Is this feasible in your opinion?
Yeah, look, we're anticipating June 24 to be back to our pre-COVID levels. So, pardon me. So that sort of vaguely comes back about that time. Leisure will probably come back first, leisure travel and VFR, and I think we think that business travel will be a little later on than that. It will probably, in the 2025 financial year, it'll tend to come back about when what we think it was pre-COVID 2019. So, that's pretty consistent.
All right, and that's obviously perhaps a fairly conservative estimate there. We're still looking at a few good years ahead of us before we get back to that normal range of passengers. Is that the case?
Yes. Yeah, it's just going to take time, and it's mainly about government restrictions. The COVID's going to be around for years. We know that. We just got to learn to live with it, and there will be a few restrictions and things that we have to do to live with that.
Very well said. We will have to learn to live with it. People are calling it the new normal, and that's something that the air travel space is obviously going to have to adapt to as well, the new normal for them. And we're gearing up for the introduction of vaccine passports and tighter security measures, particularly for biosecurity, obviously. Now, I'm sure that passengers are most concerned about the fluctuation of ticket prices. Do you think this is just normal occurrence for the early days of travel?
Yeah, I think the ticket prices will come back to reasonably normal fairly quickly. As I said before, at the moment, there are quite a few. There are so few seats. Airfare is quite expensive if you can get one, if you want to come back into Australia. So it'll come back to reasonably pre-COVID levels. We think fairly quickly after the restrictions are eased from the Australian government and the states.
Right, because it's all about the space on the actual seats of the plane. Is that what's making it so costly at the moment? The sheer cost of getting a small group of passengers on a plane?
That's exactly it. If a carrier can only carry 10 to 15, 20 people, it's they just have to charge more, and it's mainly business class. So, but that will change as soon as it becomes people can fly in. It'll come back very quickly.
All right. Well, I'm hoping we'll see that soon. And we're also seeing some promising new developments in this space as this is all unfolding. We've got some takeover deals and new and improved airports around the country, as I'm sure you've heard. What are you most excited about? Anything in particular?
No, look, I think from a travel point of view, it's the government easing restrictions. We know the virus is here. Just about all our overseas countries with a lot higher infection rates than us are pretty much open. So there's absolutely no reason why Australia shouldn't be open to the world, particularly to vaccinated people. That's vaccinated, negative tested people. We should be open now. It's going to take a little bit longer because there's been a bit of scaremongering on that here, but I think it'll come back pretty quickly.
Right, very good point. Obviously, the opening of the borders is the first step there to get any key success in the area. Right.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully domestic borders will open sooner rather than later, but it looks like the international borders are going to open fairly quickly anyway. So, let's take what we can get international borders, even if it's well before domestic borders. We'll take that, and then people can get out and travel overseas to, probably mainly Europe, UK, North America, Singapore, Fiji, by the looks. So I think people are really looking forward to that, and it's going to happen pretty quickly by the looks.
Well, yes, definitely by the looks of it. As long as we don't get any bumps along the road, hopefully that's something we can look forward to in the very near future. On that note, it's just about time for a break on our show, which means I've got to let you go, Graham, but I've got to say thanks so much for joining us today. It's been great to hear insights.
Thanks, Holly. Great talking to you.
Great to have you on the program. Welcome back to Travel Insights on Kalkine TV. Over to the latest news in the travel space now, and Qantas has released its international flight schedules for December of this year. The airline is no doubt anticipating high demand if the borders reopen by this time. That being said, however, international travel coming out of the pandemic will be more complex and likely more costly than we've seen before. By now, we know that we can expect the introduction of vaccine passports and tighter security measures, particularly biosecurity. Although on top of that, many countries are now demanding travellers have insurance before entering the country. So it seems what was once optional and extra is no longer that way, and it's now mandatory as an extra safety measure. Speaking of passports though, the regular kind, not the vax kind, expect delays in the processing. in the coming months as more and more people are getting their applications in. During lockdowns, naturally these applications saw a plummet, resulting in as little as 2 days for processing. Well, the Australian Passport Office has issued just over 600,000 passports over the past year compared to 1.7 million in 2019. Meaning a larger number of Aussies have allowed their passports to expire. So expect that short time frame is likely to majorly lengthen and perhaps even a delay in the border reopening, as applications have been increasing since August. Over to New Zealand now, who have extended the suspension on their travel bubble with Australia, bringing quarantine-free travel to a halt for another 8 weeks. Under the previous arrangement, travel between the two countries has been given the green light without the need for passengers undergoing a 2-week isolation period. Although that same agreement has been stopped and started again as the COVID situation has fluctuated thanks to the uncontrolled spread of the Delta variant. The NZ government has now reversed this allowance once again, extending the suspension until the 19th of November this year. Now to some news from the market, which has been reacting to the revival of the sector. Shares of aviation stocks like Qantas, Regional Express, Air New Zealand, Alliance Aviation Services and Sydney Airport were in focus after the injection of a further $184 million into the cash-strapped aviation space. The airlines are gearing up to resume operations as borders reopen, and the new funding includes $119.6 million to extend by 5 months the International Aviation Support Program to March the 31st of 2022. The extension of this financial aid is a major boost for the airline aviation industry, as it would help the industry to retain key skills and capabilities for the long-haul travel in particular. And it also supports the training and maintenance work required to get aircrafts back in the sky, according to Qantas Airways. Now to some good news. Finally, one major tourist hotspot is looking at reopening to overseas tourists. That's right, Bali is in preparations to allow travelers back in as soon as October. But before you start looking at buying tickets, keep in mind that this allowance is only for those from selected countries with low case numbers, including Korea, Japan, Singapore and New Zealand. Although Australia could join this exclusive list if 80% of our citizens are fully vaccinated by November. How likely is this to happen? Well, never say never. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Travel Insights. I'll see you next Monday on Kalkine TV.